All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Elite 100. Great to see all you guys. We get you to pop your cameras on. That'd be awesome. Hopefully you guys are having an amazing week. We had an amazing TIR last night on lesson 8 in praxis. Lenny was there. I know Michael Shine was there, and it just reminded me to invite you guys to those Monday night thinking and results. If you haven't been in a while, or even if you have, it was really interactive and really enlightening. And Lenny, I don't know if you know what you thought about it, but I felt the energy was like really high, and the depth of the content went really, really good.
Yeah, I think that I've got to tell you that both of those calls are great. Getting on Mindset Masters is great because there's always knowledge that we can get. I mean, even when you don't expect it, you hear something that you can resonate with. I mean, it's powerful. The TIR call, that was super power. I would love to see everybody from the Elite 100 get on that thing and enjoy TIR again. You can never get enough. I got to tell you that it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I listen, I get everybody has schedule, everybody here is busy, so it's not that, but it is a benefit to you guys to show up for those when you want. Valerie does a great job reposting the content in the group. So it's part of the value of the Elite. And we go a lot deeper into Bob's original content in thinking and results. And I get a lot out of it myself, so I don't know. Like maybe I'm biased. So why don't we start with some wins? Jan, you're glowing. What's a good win from you?
Oh, my wins to be here with you guys. I also we did our elevated human experience today, Joe Dispenza walk, and
Oh wow.
it's kind of amazing. I know, thank you to Michael. Is Michael here? Michael Shine. He's the one that brought it up as far as the Joe Dispenza doing it. And then we created a local event with the local community. And I mean, I was in so much gratitude for the people that showed up. Thank you, Val, for being there. And there were new people that we haven't met, but I will share with you, these people, it, all walks of life. It didn't matter. Like some people were into this like for multiple decades. Some people just became awakened and started like kind of learning about this thing. But the spiritual powers inside the gift, I mean, it was incredible. The people that we attracted, like I don't even have words, as you can see. It was an amazing, amazing experience. And I know that the relationships are going to continue to grow. And more than anything, I just saw the hunger and thirst for community and the desire to talk about spirituality that a lot of people have suppressed for so long.
I love it. Love it,
Yeah.
love it, love it. Lenny, what about you, bud? It's a good win.
So Beth and I have been living in Southern California for the last couple weeks. We'll be here for a few more weeks, but my win is that daily I come upon someone that's interesting and I can relate with. I mean, it's daily, it's everywhere. But on Sunday, Beth and I did a Joe Dispenza inspired
Hmm.
uh, Brit workshop and Joe Dispenza influenced workshop, and we just spent hours exposing ourselves to content. It was magnificent. Again, coming in contact with people that are truly amazing. I love it. At the risk of, I missed a meeting with. I was supposed to meet Serena at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock that day, and the conference wasn't over, so I did miss that. But wow, such powerful stuff.
Love it, love it. Great energy, great energy. Mr. Len, would you like to lead us in the mastermind principles if I bring it up?
Yeah, I got them. I touch those things. I connect with them with touching. So I release myself to the mastermind because I'm strong when I have others to help me. I believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond my own. I understand that I will more easily create positive results in my life when I'm open to looking at myself, my challenges and opportunities from another's point of view. I decide. I decided to release my desire totally and trust to the mastermind, and I am open to accepting new possibilities. I forgive. I forgive myself for mistakes that I have made, and I also forgive others who have hurt me in the past, so I can move forward into the future with a clean slate. I ask the mastermind to hear what I really want, my goals, my dreams, and my desires, and I hear my mastermind partners supporting me in my fulfillment. I accept. I know, relax, and accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to my every need. I am grateful knowing this is so. Dedication and covenant. I now have a covenant in which it is agreed that the mastermind shall supply me with an abundance of all things necessary to live in a success-filled and happy life. I dedicate myself to be of maximum service to the world and my fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the highest example for others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will. I go forth with a spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy.
Amazing. Thank you for that, brother. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the science of getting rich. I was reading that late last night. I sent you guys a picture, and it's been a minute. Like, I'm glad we were jumping back into those, because I read that years ago, and I read it a bunch of times. But as we continue to grow, and as you guys know, reading something for, the 10th time or 5 years later, our awareness just goes through the roof. So if possible, if you guys could turn your cameras on for this, that would be amazing, because we're going to mastermind on content a little bit here. Let me just pull this up. Bear with me. Let's see. Just pulling up my Kindle. Here we go. Perfecto. All right. Is this big enough for you guys to see, or should I expand it a little? Oh, good. Matt and Yenna laughing. They get everybody's laughing. What's going on?
No, the dog, like our
Tammy's
little
taking
dog.
over.
Oh, I didn't see. I was
Our dog
switching.
wants to take over.
Oh, geez. Awesome. Well, I'll start here, and then we'll pass the torch here. It says, it is true that you will do best in a business which you like and which it is congenial to you. And if you have certain talents which are well developed, you will do best in a business which calls for the exercise of those talents. Also, you do best in a business which is suited to your locality. The funny thing about that doesn't really matter anymore. This was written in the late 1800s, before the internet. Literally doesn't matter, right? Bob had a business in every single country in the world, which is impressive. So it's funny how things change. An ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland, and a salmon fishery will succeed better in the Northwest than in Florida, where there is no salmon. But aside from these general limitations, getting rich is not dependent upon your engaging in some particular business, but upon your learning to do things in a certain way. If you are now in business and anybody else in your locality is getting rich in the same business, while you are not getting rich, it is simply because you are not doing things in the same way that the other person is doing them. So the funny thing about this highlights the real estate, especially in flipping, different pockets of different areas, right? I know some people that are just at an all-time high in real estate, even though the trend has been down for about a year and it's tightening all the interest rate, a lot of factors, right? But I was talking with Eric Elixon, and like they're crushing it. They're at an all-time high, like more deals than ever. But it's because it's vibration. If any of you get with Eric and have a one-on-one with them, you'll see that he's just really tapped into source, just quite naturally, always looking for what's good, and they're just more real estate. Like they're getting to the point where they're gonna wholesale most of their deals out. It's like, so why is he having so much success? And he's in the middle of the country. He's not like in a hot spot like Florida or Texas, right? He's creating a hot spot with his energy, and even people around him aren't doing as well. It's them, right? It's their energy. So that's like a real world case. So it's something to think about with the industries that you're in, and myself included. If we're challenged or struggling, it's us, right? It's going to come from the vibration that we're putting out to and through our team, and then to and through and out into the universe. And even in the Great Depression, think about this. During the Great Depression, still the worst economic time in history, there was more millionaires and billionaires created during that than any other time in history. So there was still certain people, even though there was like arguably the most doom and gloom in recent history, there was still certain people that acted in a certain way. And that's the essence of these books, by the way. Think and Grow Rich was written out of the Great Depression, based on the people that were thriving during the Great Depression. So I think it's really, really important to ponder this and to reflect on ourselves and living from the inside out, right? says no one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. It says true, as you get capital, the increase becomes more easily and rapid, but one who has capital is already rich and does not need to consider how to become so. So no matter how poor someone may be, if we begin to do things in a certain way, we will get rich and you will begin to have capital. The getting of capital is part of the process of getting rich, and is part of the result which invariably follows the doing of things in a certain way. So this is interesting too, because we all know the stories of like Steve Jobs. I always say he started with $750 in a garage and created a $2 trillion company. Elon Musk, I found out the other day, like he was like 1 or 2 days from bankruptcy before he got a big government contract, and everything turned the other way, right? So like the ultimate all in, the ultimate faith. And some of those people I think are unconsciously competent, right? They may not be studying this stuff and know how to articulate and teach it, but it's really neat to see the real world examples of some of the pioneers of the world that are living and breathing this stuff. It says you may be the poorest person on the continent and deeply in debt. You may have neither friends, influence, nor resources, but if you begin to do things in a certain way, you must infallibly begin to get rich. For like causes must produce like effects. Right? Like causes must produce like effects. And that's literally the law of cause and effect, right? Energy out, energy back. If you have no capital, you can get capital. I'm sorry. If you're in the wrong business, you can get in the right business. If you're in the wrong location, you can get it to the right location. And you can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in a certain way, which always causes success. You must begin to live in harmony with the laws governing the universe. Yun, you want to take over from here? And again, just feel free to stop anywhere, or anybody else raise your hands, jump in.
Yes, thank you. Is opportunity monopolized? No one is kept poor because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it. You may be shut off from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions, according to the needs of the whole and the particular stage of social evolution which has been reached. There is abundance of opportunity for the person who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. I love how you highlighted that too. It's all about flow. And it's not, I take this and really say everything starts from the inside out, because at the end of the day, it's never anything outside of you, right? No one is kept poor because other people have monopolized the wealth. That's the programming that we've been believed. But if everybody realizes that everything that we want, like I love going back to TIR, where's the money?
Yes.
Wherever it is right now, right? It is so true. It's wherever it is right now. It's wherever it is, as long as you believe.
And then they're talking about going against the tide, right? At the Elite 100 event, you guys going against the tide. What are some things we can do to go against the quote unquote the tide?
Blaming the economy.
Blaming
right?
the
Like
economy.
Outside forces are, people, places, and things, like anything that at every moment in time, we're always making decisions, whether we know it or not, even in the way that our brain transmits energy and the way that we perceive things. And there's only really two options that every human has. And really it's, are we playing victim mode? Are we playing self-mastery mode?
Mm-hmm.
Everything outside of us, are we seeing it as our creation and where we get to grow and see the efforts of our creation? Or are we blaming the outer world and playing the victim and saying we can't do because A, B, C, or D?
Love it.
Do you want me to keep going, or do you want somebody else? Yeah. Oh, so workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trust and big businesses. As a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by an entire class's ignorance of these laws. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will tell him how.
So the interesting thing and the challenge is this book does not reach out to the masses. This is not a high school or a college reading, is it? So what he's saying is true, but what if somebody never gets exposed to this? And that's why a lot of us are doing something about it, right? We're committing part or all of our life to coaching, getting this content out. But just think about that, right? The masses, it's not their fault. I was never exposed to Think and Grow Rich in high school or college or anything. I wasn't exposed to anything worthwhile until my first days in network marketing company. And you start to like personal develop. That's where I was exposed to Think and Grow Rich, met Bob, all the things. But I was 41 years old. So what a shame that most people don't ever get exposed to this. Actually, I'm kind of curious, Lenny, when's the first real exposure you had to what I would call universal content, like universal laws?
Just a few years ago, probably 4 years ago.
That's crazy.
2018, 2019. Yeah. And prior to that, as you know, I resisted it strongly. When Beth would provide some information to me, I would really put my hackles up and say, stop bothering me with this stuff. What I know right now is that even though I can say the words, I wish it was years and years ago, it's not necessarily the case, because I am embracing it so much right now that perhaps I wouldn't embrace it this strongly if I was moving slower with it years ago. So I'm a winner right now.
Yeah, I mean, faith is believing that we're all part of a plan, right? Everything for a reason. There's certain times for things. You've had a magnificent, brilliant career that most people put you at the top of fraction of 1% in your industry. So yeah, I think the timing, same with me, I say that sometimes too, but then I got to look back. It's a shame that I didn't know any of this until my early 40s, but it kind of is what it is. Yeah.
So I'm a huge believer that the teacher comes when the student is ready. And it shows up in so many different forms. And Len, you said it so beautifully and so perfectly. I believe that, yeah, you probably wouldn't have appreciated, or it would have taken you on a different trajectory. And even the closeness with your wife and your children would have looked different, right? So the ability to have gratitude for all things. Brian, I don't know if you know this. So those that do know our story, Matt and I, it's wild. Like, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And when I become aware of something, how all the dots tend to connect. And what I mean by that is, Matt and I got into real estate because we wanted to get out of the grind of our dry cleaning industry, that we were working 6 days a week and we only took vacations like 3 days once a year. It was right around 4th of July. And that's really the purpose as to why we got into real estate, into passive income. Then we got into fixing and flipping. And then I wanted to get into sales because I really wanted to just get out of the industry. Now, with that said, as I was getting out of the real estate industry, I had an opportunity where someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I became a team leader of the Market Center. Now, Brian, I had a coach as a team leader, so I felt like, the company poured into me so that I could get better at what I was doing. And one of the coaches brought me to my knees, because there was one question that he asked me on one of my coaching calls. And the question he asked me was, Yan, who gets the best version of you? In that moment, my whole life paused and I had tears dropping down from my face, because the answer that I wanted to say was my husband and my children. But I couldn't say that. I couldn't say that because in that moment, I realized that it was them that got the worst of me. All the people that I was doing it for, which was my husband, my children, my parents, and whatnot, they got the worst of me. And the people that got the best of me were my clients. And I paused and I froze because I didn't know what to do. And I literally had tears streaming down my face, and I knew that something had to shift. Well, it was shortly after that, Brian, that you came into my world and brought thinking into results.
Wow. I love it.
Right.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. And then again, go through thinking into results. Then I start learning about energy, and then I start tapping into what I am. And I'm like, holy moly. And I keep going in this curiosity of what else? So when I say, the more that I know, the more I realize I don't know. What I don't know is what I'm truly capable of, because I'm just starting to scratch on the surface of it.
Mhm.
Right. And that's what I,
That's all of us, right? That's Bob.
Yeah.
I remember when he said this to me, it blew my mind. Like at that time, he was like 78 years old. He'd been studying for like 58 years or something. And he looked me square in the eye and he's like, you know, I've been studying every single day for 58 years, and I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible, scratching the surface of connection to source. And he was the most intense, you know, studier, if that's a word, that I've ever met. So yeah, 100%. Len?
Yeah, I'm going to pile on Brian right about now because, and I've said it before, but I will never stop saying it. You've given me the opportunity to grow in a fashion that's that I didn't know existed, and so even though our contact came through the Contact Ninja investment, you exposed me gently and slowly, exposed me to material, and between you and Beth, you truly have changed my life, and in a positive way. And I will say that um, you lit the fire, but I've taken it from there.
Mhm.
I'm taking this and running with the ball, but you lit the fire, my brother. Appreciate you.
I receive and appreciate that. And yeah, and you're about to do the same thing for so many other people, right? Which is same thing that happened to me. I mean, Yun's probably one of the only ones that's known me long enough to knew me before this content. And Valerie, obviously. But if you would have known me in my 20s and 30s, this is not the path you would have predicted for me. I promise you. So I know how you feel. It's amazing. So, Michael?
Okay, so I guess there's a great credit to you for accountability, because you got Brenda and I doing the TIR to do the coaching in the future, and so we are very serious about it now. So I just connected the dots with the document you had us read, the extra document from the first week, which is the one about decision.
Vision, yes.
And so I've read Science of Getting Rich probably, or listened to it easily over 50 times. But when he talks about there's a thinking stuff and you put your thought into the thinking stuff, I just had a thought while you were reading this, that you put your thought into thinking stuff by making a decision. Because as soon as you make that decision, then, you know, providence moves too, everything starts forming for you. And this whole thing that we're talking about with the money, I think there was one thing in Bob's decision thing about, well, you don't have the money to go to Paris because you haven't decided to go to Paris yet.
Exactly.
But as soon as you decide I'm going to Paris, the money will appear. And that's basically what this stuff we're reading is talking about now, that you make a decision, and that for me is putting it into thinking stuff. And when you put it, you know, decision to cut off, we all know decide, all that stuff.
Mhm.
You put it up into thinking stuff, and then things start happening for you, including the money that you didn't think you have starts showing up.
1,000,000%. And I think everybody here has had examples of that, but I also think everybody here from time to time, we forget that and we let time or money make the decision for us. We don't do that. Even people in this group, even myself, right? And I have to remind myself, it's like, that's what faith is. You make the decision, you move forward, and the money does show up. And there's a million different ways it could show up. And it's usually from something that we don't either remember, or it's just completely a different way. I've had that happen so many times now. And that's where the frequency of faith comes in. So, you know, when he's talking about thinking stuff, we could also say energy, right? So decision comes from the consciousness, our conscious thought to make a decision. So we're implying the force of consciousness into the stuff called energy to manipulate it from energy into matter. Now, back then, they didn't know quantum mechanics, quantum physics. This is like way ahead of its time. This is in the late 1800s. So they called it thinking stuff. But we are consciousness, right? We are part of God's power, where God is expressing through us, right? Our universal consciousness is taking a turn to and through us to express physically. And that's why every single one of us needs to remind ourselves to always separate decision from time and money. I still need those reminders. We all do. Like, decision is decision. Time and money come after decision. And you'll create the time and attract the funds if we make decision followed, but in a faith-based frequency, not in a depressed frequency. That's where people miss it. If you're moping around sad, depressed, angry, you're putting out low vibrations, but visualizing what you want. So that's the opposite of attraction. It's called repulsion. It's like if you flip a magnet over, instead of sticking, it repels, right? It's the same force. So it's not enough just to write your goals, visualize your goals. We must do the things to get into a high loving vibration, the frequency of love and faith, while we're fantasizing our goals. So I see some people miss that. Probably not so much here. I think it's a good reminder. Nelson, I'm just curious, when did you get either attracted to or shown your first, what I would call universal content, things that made you ponder outside of the school system?
I don't know if I have an exact moment. So interestingly enough, I don't know if I've told this story or not, but me and Chris have worked together for 20 plus years. And so I've always been, go-getter, super positive, super optimistic, things will work out. I've always had that mindset. And so when Chris started studying, Bob Proctor, a few years ago, he brought it to my attention and said, Nelson, you got to start, looking at this content. You got to start studying this. It's amazing. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I'm already, but I'm always open to learning too, right? I'm always like, I can always learn more. So pleasantly surprised as I started diving into the content and starting studying it. Now, what I found very interesting about it is I had always done studies on, physics. And I read the book E equals MC squared that talks about what happens when the atomic bomb was about to go off. It tells the whole detailed story. So I've always been fascinated with the large and the very, very small, like quantum and very, very big. It's always fascinated me. So all this content touches on the scientific part of it, which has always fascinated me. And then, of course, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. So the God part of it is also there. So it all kind of connected everything. As I got 3 months in the TIR, everything started connected from my past studies and everything. So it was kind of an evolving awakening into the excitement of this content and how it applies and how it affects your life and how it affects others.
So I had a very similar experience. I'd been so scientific and I had been completely ignorant about source and what people call God or spirit. But when I started working with Bob and then thinking in the results, he made it very, very simple to understand, about source and about God and things of that nature. So I had a lot of big aha moments like that.
Absolutely.
Results,
and I just started reading God Works Through Faith, which is I think the second book in the series.
Yep.
Or it's one of the three, I think, that gentleman's written. I can't remember his name, but
Robert Russell.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through the God Works Through Faith, and it's another really, really good read in terms of the content. So it's resonating.
We'll put that on a list for sure after this one. Has anybody here ever read The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton?
Absolutely. Another fascinating book.
That's a left brain scientific one, but it'll get you into some understanding of quantum physics and energy and infinite smallness. And what Yun talks about, every little subatomic particle has consciousness and how that all works together. It's a brilliant, brilliant book for that side of it, if you want to geek out on the tech side. So love it. Nelson, you want to take over from the top of the page, brother?
The very top where it says no one is kept.
Yep.
All right. No one is kept in poverty by shortness in the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the capital of Washington might be built for every family on earth from the building material in the United States alone. And under intensive cultivation in this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk enough to clothe each person in the world finer than Solomon was arrayed in all of his glory, together with food enough to feed them all luxuriously.
Let's pause there for a second. I want to kind of ponder on that a minute, right? You think, I've always said this, right? There's poverty all around the world. There's hunger around the world. There's lack of water. There's things, but that's not because of the universe, God, or the planet. It's because of civilization and not banding together to create pathways for all this stuff. There's more food thrown out daily in Las Vegas that could feed probably all the homeless people in the country. I don't know if that's an accurate statistic, but it's probably something like that. And if you aggregate all the restaurants everywhere that would likely want to donate their food, but they don't want to get sued by the FDA and different things, like, it's just a shame that people aren't banding together, because there's no shortage of anything. Literally no shortage of anything. And when you hear statistics like this, there's enough raw material in the United States alone to build a palace for every single man, woman, and child in the world. It's just, it's a shame that humanity, although I feel we're moving in that direction, hasn't come together more. It's just
why did the media, the elite, whoever you want to call them, why do they paint continuous visions of scarcity? Like there's not enough land in the world, right? It's control, and it's a shame. Water scarcity. I mean, there's so many things that are put out there in terms of scarcity programming that, once you have the awareness, you're like, yeah, that's not true. That's fear tactics. It's control.
Right?
Yeah, it's definitely scare tactics.
I just want to say,
go ahead, Michael.
It's kind of a strange place to get this lesson from, but I watch like YouTube shorts.
Yeah.
And I see all these guys with like 8 Lamborghinis and Maybachs and all that stuff. And it really kind of opened my eyes to the fact there's just so much abundance out there. Just, when they show like Dubai, or they show like,
oh my God, who here has been to Dubai?
You have.
Nobody else? Oh, I highly recommend it, just to experience like an insane amount of wealth and abundance. The cleanest place I've ever been, and is like zero crime, and it has some of the world's, if not most of the world's, most amazing architectural, like going to the Burj Khalifa and just getting around this 163-story building, like, and they're building like bigger ones. It's I mean, in some ways you could look at it as a big waste of resources, but there's also a beauty to it that I think it's worth experiencing, just from my humble point of view.
And I think it points. I'm sorry. It points to what people want, right? It's what you want, and what you want is what you want, whether it's small or big. It's all relative, right? Or irrelevant.
1,000,000%. Matt.
All right, now I'll go. So it's pretty interesting. Yun was introduced to this church, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, and she had gone to support a friend, and then we started going, and it's amazing of how the Bible is interpreted and the message that goes out. And this week he runs a series like every 6 weeks, and this series is called Paradigm Shift. And, oh, wow. Yeah, and I mean, you want to talk about a pastor, Brian? Like this kid, like he's not from Fitchburg, but like completely turned his life around and immersed himself in Bible study. Super charismatic. He actually did this on the mind and mind control, which gets into the intellectual factors. It was really, really cool. And this past weekend, they were talking about the poverty mindset. And what was interesting about it was it wasn't just in regards to.
Uh-oh. That's a cute face.
Paraphrase.
There we go.
Or am I?
You froze up for a second, blowing us a kiss.
Oh, so I'll paraphrase, but it really talked about, the poverty mindset as far as self-image. And this idea of like, what skills do I lack? What love do I lack? What people do I lack around me? So I think it's important for us to understand that it's not just the material things that people focus on as far as poverty. It is also the connection to those intellectual factors as well that we all have.
Oh, absolutely. Like it goes back to spirit, intellect, and body. It's like it's like a rainbow, right? There's no lines of demarcation. Ideally, here in the elite, we're learning and getting reminded every single week. This is, for me, it's imperative, obviously, to meet you guys every week, but it reminds me to get out of the mechanical, which is my tendency. Some of you might be like way in the spiritual and forget to be in the physical, right? And meanwhile, we're here expressing for X amount of years physically. So to me, this is a really good reminder about balance from spirit to intellect and body. And and what each part does. And I just love I love the reminder. I love getting into the content. So Matt, you want to take over from the visible supply?
Yeah. Let me blow you a kiss first. Okay.
Yeah.
The visible supply is practically inexhaustible, and the invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving, but all are shapes assumed by one thing.
Well, I want to highlight something there. Again, when this was written, they were not aware of physics, like quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And it says here, made from one original substance. If he was rewriting this today, it would be, say, made from energy. Right? It used to, don't forget, when he wrote this, it was thought and believed that there was two building blocks in the universe. There was energy and matter. And they didn't address as much consciousness. They talked about God, but they didn't really clearly articulate what universal intelligence and God is. So it's just interesting because they keep saying substance when matter is energy in different form, right? So I thought that's kind of interesting. Continue.
One thing I'll say real quick here, Brian, this brings me back. Bob runs a thing around gratitude, and I love the little video he has because it references Thomas Troward, and it says that heaven's first law is order. And it really talks about, it goes back to, I would say the I am and the concept, let's go from, it doesn't matter how you say it, whether it's God or energy just is, wasn't created nor destroyed. And it's really about our level of awareness to put that into order. So when it talks about things are constantly being made and other things are dissolving, it's because we are able to have new order as we figure out different principles, in the world that we live in.
100%. So it's interesting when they talk about things are being dissolved and made. Who here can tell me what universal law that is? The process of things being apparently, to the eyeballs, dissolved and made.
Transmutation of energy.
Transmutation of energy, the perpetual transmutation of energy. And again, I don't think that law was well articulated or known back then. I'm not quite sure. But it's not that things disintegrate, they go back to energy. They don't actually disappear. It's just our eyes can't see energy. There's only a small sliver of light that we can actually see. Most energy, light, colors, bandwidth, most of them we can't see with the eye, almost all of them. We're seeing such a small thing with our eyeballs. The rest of it is up to our souls and our consciousness and our intuition to become aware of. So it's one of the things I love about this writing is it's old enough to make us ponder a lot of questions.
Yeah,
Mr. Walker, what's up?
your hand up and down.
Who did?
I just think it's so amazing if you really think about the four elements that created everything, which is water, wind, earth, and air, right? Those are the four elements that created everything on this planet. And just going back to Matt, the reason I put it down is because you went back into the order. And then think of what else is coming as far as what exists now. And it's like this compound effect that we get to experience as humans of all these things coming into order and creation. And then I wanted to just kind of hit upon what Nelson was talking about. Why do they inject so much more fear and fear? When we really think, for me anyways, my interpretation is when, law of polarity, everything on this earth lives by the law of polarity and these universal laws. So the greater that we're actually, reaching, the more abundance, the more bliss, the more enlightenment. And I think there's going to be words that are going to describe even higher vibrations than that. As we go through, the other part exists, right? So it gets into deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, what I believe is so freaking powerful, us as humans, if we really think about it, both positive and negative exist at the same exact time at all times. We just as humans have the power to choose the direction in which we choose to focus it on. That's the real power inside of us. And as we get together in groups like this, and as we do commit to our own personal development, the more that we choose to focus on the side of abundance and the positive and all of that, it allows us to co-create a whole nother world. That doesn't mean that the other side is not going to exist. What's going to happen, I truly believe, it just stays further and further and further away, where we get to uplift humanity in a whole nother world. You know, like, I don't know if I'm describing it right, but you guys can probably feel
No,
it.
you
Like,
are,
it's
and
just amazing.
Well, it's a good reminder, because there is positive and negative charges in every cell of your body, and it's the law of polarity. So, but positive and negative, one thing I need to remind myself from time to time, but more often not, like people in like the inner circle and down, is that positive and negative do not mean good and bad. They just mean positive and negative. And it's our perception of even things that are happening. You know, we've all been through what we would label a loss or a downturn or a sad or bad situation, but the higher level of awareness is to really realize that we're labeling that. Even the passing of a loved one is a good example. When we're born, we're shown like all this, you know, dark, like misery, and like they're gone. And the reality is they're not gone. They're just not physically here. So I think that's probably one of the bigger ones, like understanding and you know, grieving and just understanding the whole death process, probably one of the biggest things that we go through. I think this material can really help.
Can I just add to that? Like, I want to plant the seed here, because I think somebody knows somebody, or it's going to happen. It's going to come into fruition. It's probably already happened, to be very honest. And I'm just not seeing it. We are going to celebrate death. We are going to celebrate death and funerals and wakes and things. It's not going to look like this at all. Exactly, Brian. Right. Mm-hmm. But here in America, it's going to be a common thing that it becomes celebrated, because at the end of the day, when people realize like the power of transmutation of energy, and we are just parts of cycles of energy, right? Like,
that's an interesting point of view. Interesting point of view. Yeah. Yeah. Some
think
cultures
about that.
do that. It's not looked at it at all like we look at it. So somebody else had their hand up, but then put it down. Who was that? Dan?
Nelson.
Oh, we'll go Dan, then Nelson.
Yeah, so as an engineer, you know, we were taught about conservation of energy, which means energy cannot be destroyed. It just changes form. And that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
You know, and when somebody passes away, they're just changing an energy form.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Nelson?
And we are the lucky ones to be able to experience life in this energy form for 60, 80, 100 years, right? However long we get to experience it in the short blip. So we are the lucky ones. But, you know, one other thing that happened over the past, you know, couple of years is politics, and the energy that you put into politics, that negative, divisive politics is so divisive, and people get I got sucked in to politics, right? And I got sucked out at the right time, because it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But if you choose to focus on what energy you want to focus on, right? And what energy levels and what people and what topics and where you put your time and energy. And, you know, the more you pull yourself away from the negative vibration stuff, the divisive stuff, the higher awareness you have. And, you know, people who talk about getting sick all the time, you have the awareness to, you think you're sick, right? You have the power to tell your body to heal up. You have a God-given immune system that will heal you faster than you can imagine, but you just have to think through that stuff. So I find myself really, you know, operating on a much more confident level of awareness, you know, on things like that.
No, 100%. It's like I said, it goes back to spirit, intellect, and body. And sometimes we have them, and I'm not saying that it's not, you know, not to mourn people and things like that, because there's the law of opposites, right? It's polarity again, the law of opposites. We wouldn't know joy if we didn't know sorrow. That's just like, if you were born and all you knew was bliss, you would go insane, just the same way as if all you ever knew was depression. We don't think that. We think, oh, I just want to always be happy, always be high, 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 high. Bob used to explain it. Imagine a symphony orchestra with just the piccolo. Like, even a symphony needs the dark, deep bass lows so we can get the full experience. So to me, I relate that to like when somebody passes. It's completely fine to get really sad and let it all out. It's just, we don't want to stay there for 10 years. We don't want to maintain that low vibration, because we'll attract more of that which we are putting out. And that's you know, it's a blessing to experience life on all the different highs and lows. I think that's the way to look at it. So
I think that's what manic depressive is, right? They have really big highs and really big lows. And from what I understand about it, is that the manic states are just as detrimental to their health as the depressive states, and they swing back and forth from up here to down here. And, you know, that's not the way you want to do it. Too high for too long is going to be damaging, the same as too low. Bob always told me that however much you can get excited about something is however much you can be sad about something. And that's why people who live a serene life, if you remember the last chapter of As a Man Thinketh, Bob reads that on YouTube, by the way, if anyone wants to see it. It's like 3 minutes long. I listen to that every day when I'm stretching. And he talks about it's basically always being even keeled, right? It's always, when good things are there, it's great. And when negative things are there, it's still great. It's always serene. It's always calm. And you find the peace in the stillness.
Absolutely. That's a great recommendation, by the way. If you could maybe, do you have a link to that? Maybe throw it in the chat. And
another thing is too, I think this book was literally written like 2 years after the first car ever came out.
Yeah, it was the late 1800s. Yeah.
The first car came out from Henry Ford. I just Googled it, 1896.
Yeah.
So this guy might not even know what a car is and was able to write about this. So his awareness of where the world has gone is zero, right? And he was able to write this stuff. So I think that puts this into even more perspective of how much Wallace Wattles actually understood.
It's insane when you think about it. Yeah, he was way ahead of his time, and he must have been tapping into source, because he would not have got this information from other men and women. Came to him from source, right? Yeah.
There you go, Trey. Trey's been wanting to talk and he just couldn't speak. Go ahead, Trey.
My audio wasn't working at all. I was like, wow.
Hey,
all right.
watch this one.
I
Watch
guess I'm
this
not
one.
supposed to talk.
Trey, you're gonna love this. Watch me whip. Watch me yay, Trey.
That makes me laugh every time. That is hilarious. So something that this makes me think of is something that Tony Robbins talks about a lot. He says at all times, including this time, at all times, 3 things are happening. We're choosing 1, what to focus on. 2, what does it mean? What's the story we're telling ourselves about it? And then 3, what are we going to do about it? Which really produces the results. And it starts with what we're choosing to focus on, and that the wrong is always available, and so is what's right. And so what you're talking about, Brian, with like, you know, we do need that darkness. I love the orchestra, you know, as a musician. I love that analogy. I hadn't heard that, but I like that a lot. But really, when we're going without some kind of help, internally or externally, whatever flavor of it, in whatever area of life, we get to go without for a moment. And then when it comes back, when our help returns, then we can have a gratitude for it that otherwise we couldn't. But a specific question that I found incredibly helpful when going through a challenging time in whatever area of life, this one question I found to be very, very powerful, which is, what's the best this could mean? What's the best this could mean? Because a lot of times, think about it, like a lot of times people respond internally, subconsciously asking the question, what's the worst this could mean? Let me respond accordingly.
Yeah.
But if we even consciously ask ourselves, you know what? What's the best this could mean? What's the best this could mean? And then see what comes to mind. To me, that's been a very, very powerful question. So I just want to share that real quick. We're always choosing what to focus on. What's the story we're telling ourselves about it? What's the meaning we're assigning it? And then what are we going to do about it? It's all about choosing to focus on what's right over what's wrong, because they're both always available.
No, I love that. What I took the biggest takeaway there is that what's the meaning that we're choosing to put on it? I think most people, and even us here from time to time, we forget that that's a choice about it's all things in the physical environment, right? It's living from the outside, and this is straight like lesson 5 out of thinking and results on environment. Whenever we're in that mode, we're allowing what is manifested to control our thinking instead of thinking to manifest. We've gotten caught in like a backwards loop, and the key is to recognize it and then change it. So I love that. Yeah.
I used to always say, harvest the good and forgive the rest.
That's one of my favorite sayings. I say it all the time.
Well, you know what's funny is you know, I got that statement from you, Brian, and I didn't realize I was saying harness instead of harvest until someone was like, they started making, I'm like, well, what I meant was harvest, right? But I was saying harness for the longest of times. What I wanted to just bring up is now science is here to even provide the evidence that depending on who the observer is, right? Like, does anything even exist if we're not observing it? That's number one. Number two, if we understand that there is no space and time when it comes to energy, you know, and Michael, you brought up the whole thing about cars, like really at the end of the day, right? It's our awareness. Everything that we get to see, that we get to hear, we get to smell, we get to, you know, feel, taste, and touch is only because our awareness has increased. Like I start dying laughing because I'm like, oh my God, I'll think of something. And you guys are probably all doing this all the time. We think of something and all of a sudden we see it, right? Like we see it, whether it shows up into our feed or we hear about it that exists in somewhere else. And the same thing goes for poverty. When we are thinking about, like you can actually witness or think it in your mind, you hear stories of it, like somewhere in some other country or whatever the case is, of these people having nothing and whatever the case is. It's just, it blows my mind of nothing really exists until it comes into our mind and we actually choose what that means. And like,
well, I'm telling, I don't know about you guys, but to me, I very much love this weekly reminder together. Like this is the only place where I ever get together with people on the same frequency, peers. And it's just so valuable for me. And hopefully you guys feel the same way. And I was just wondering, Michael put that link in the chat. Everybody should grab that, check it out. Maybe one day we can play it here and just listen to it. Because it's what I love about it is it's Bob and he's physically passed. So that'd be really neat to experience that. And I want to put a not a challenge out to you guys, but the thinking in the results from yesterday, I would encourage you to watch it. And you can skip through the wins if you want, but I would encourage you to watch the meat of it. It was on Praxis. And I think that will let you know if you want to maybe start attending again. And again, it's all voluntary, but it's part of what we offer here too. So I think it's good from time to time to get a tune-up. What else do we got? I think that's it. Anybody have any last minute comments or before we wrap up? Mike?
With what Yoon just said about you raising your awareness and understanding things as you go along, and do we even hear anything, or does anything exist if we don't hear it, right? Like people always used to say, if a tree falls in the wood, does it make a noise? But I think a good way to see awareness is a foreign language. If you have a friend who, let's say, is Russian, I had a friend over the other day that's Ukrainian, and he was trying to show me a video that was in Russian. And of course, and he's laughing at this video, and I'm just staring at it because I have no idea what's going on, right? And his awareness, when he hears that, he hears what's really going on. I just hear a bunch of noise. And so that's a great way to see how, if you were to study that language, you would be in the same boat as him and you can understand it. But if you don't have the awareness of that, you can't see it. And I think that's really evident with languages when you're around people, is they might get they understand and you're left there, staring at the wall.
That's a really good analogy. I use that same analogy when it comes to understanding the frequencies of wealth building. It's just different mental programs that you can study, right? Everything about it, all the information's here, all the resources we just read about, everything's here. So whatever you guys have towards wealth building, whatever that looks like for you, it's all here. But are we studying? Are we getting around the right people? Are we raising our level of awareness? Because Michael could start studying Ukrainian for a minute, and if he kept on it, pretty soon he'd be on the frequency of laughing too. And I use that analogy all the time. It's identical, just mental programs that we decide to go from conscious to subconscious. So great way to end. That was a good comment. I love and appreciate you all. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody.